the water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
All right. Hello, everybody. Today we have Gabby on. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on, Gabby.
Thanks for having me.
Inc. Yeah. So let's start with our icebreaker before we go into the incredible story from China to celebrities. We have some real awesome stories coming up. But before we get there, our icebreaker is, what's your prediction or maybe like the most contrarian prediction for what might happen in 2025? Taylor, do you want to go first?
This is an intense question. My most contrary. Why don't you go first, Fabio?
Look, I think all the AI stuff is overblown. I think it's not gonna actually impact the real world nearly as much as people think. In fact, I think it'll go the other way. I see like a big turn away from technology, and I think that'll impact all these companies that are trying to bet on that future. So
I agree. That my contrarian stake is that I agree. So people are looking for jobs, and like I'm helping them send emails and craft their resumes and just looking at stuff. And it's clear from a mile away things that have been put together with ChatGPT. Like you could spot it a mile away. And if I can spot it, anybody in HR or so they just throw them away, or it just doesn't. And the emails, I mean, we send a lot of cold email, but I also send just emails to clients and everything else. And what we've noticed is that the long email is dead. Like nobody wants a long email. Nobody responds to it. Nobody reads it. They just delete it, I think. Even if it's a customer, right? They just ignore them. And ChatGPT and all the others, they rate these very verbose, like, I hope you're having a good day. What? No, never start an email like that. It doesn't work. And so I agree. I think that, there's that really, really good meme that shows a guy sitting at a computer and he's like, hey, make this two-word email longer. And then it makes it super big. And then at the other side of the meme is a woman sitting at the computer like, hey, make this huge email into 2 words. And I feel like that's what's happening all over the AI economy. There's like stupid stuff happening on the front, stupid stuff happening on the back, and really everybody just wants the 2 words.
What do you think, Gabby? Not about that, but what do you think would happen in 2025?
Well, yeah, I think that topic, I agree about AI being overblown. I think that agencies, like there'll become a wider gap between good agencies and agencies that overly rely on AI. And I think that actually more creativity will outshine, like people who use AI with actual thought and creativity of their own as an agency or as an individuals will widen the gap between people who are just using it en masse. Like what Taylor just said about the emails, but not just only in emails, but overall in marketing and smart marketing. So some agencies will go out of business.
All right. Agency
Yeah,
apocalypse.
Yeah.
So that's this comes from someone that has an agency. So it's very telling that you think that. All right. So you decided one day to move to China to do business, which seems like the opposite of what people might want to do. So how did that come about? And like, yeah, how did you go through doing business in China?
So it's a crazy story, but basically I had studied abroad in the UK and gotten into a relationship with a woman, and we were long distance between Boston and the UK for 2 years. And some people, I was working at the Writing Center at Northeastern in Boston, and some people had just came back from teaching English in China. I was planning on going to law school the next year. And my girlfriend was a teacher by profession in the UK. So I was like, why don't I take a gap year and we both moved to China to teach English for a year? So that's to test out the relationship. Marriage equality didn't exist on a federal level, so we couldn't get married and stay in the US. So China was actually the easiest place on earth for us both to find jobs. So that's how I moved.
Wait, why is that? Because they really need English teachers?
Yes, and they're really well paid.
Really?
Yeah, and they give you a free house. They really, spend a lot on education in China.
Not on TikTok, but definitely on education. That's amazing. I did not know that. Okay, and so then you jumped from teaching to starting an agency while you were in China?
Well, there was many steps in between. So one of the things in China, they have a different attitude when it comes about money and talking about it. And I think growing up in the US, especially as a millennial, there's like this concept and an overemphasis on, not overemphasis, but a strong emphasis on giving back and doing things that matter for society and less so on making money. Whereas in China, they're like, if you want to be taken seriously, you got to make money. And they flaunt it. There's like no shame in talking about it. So I started to get interested in that from the culture. And so I quit my job as a regular teacher and started working as a private tutor. So I was getting paid $200 or $300 an hour doing that.
US
So that
dollars?
was like the first step. Yes, US dollars.
While living in China.
Yes.
Where were you, by the way? Beijing?
Shanghai.
Shanghai.
I don't like Beijing. People who live in Shanghai don't like Beijing and vice versa, but Beijing sucks.
Why is that?
It's like Boston and New York.
Kind of, yeah. It's just like a rivalry. But I mean, honestly, have you been to Beijing?
I've been to both.
Okay, I just think it's not a nice city.
It's not. But I didn't love Shanghai either. But keep going. So
Yeah, so then at the same time, I started an LGBT group because, well, so basically I couldn't find any queer friends. That girl and I didn't work out. And I was asking, like, where are the gay people in the city? And my straight friends are like, there are no gay people here. And I started to believe them because it had been a couple years and I didn't. And one day I was at a restaurant and I overheard the word lesbian. And I was like, I'm lesbian too. And then they told me about this meetup that happened once a month through email. So I went to that and I was like, let's do better than email. And I made a WeChat group. And through the WeChat group, it evolved from like a 10-person group to over 10,000 people.
Whoa.
And my entrepreneurial journey really started with how can I make this group sustainable so when I move back to the US, it will exist without me. And that's really when I became an entrepreneur, I would say.
See, that's the American in you, giving back, not
Yeah.
just being for money.
Yeah, that just,
Wow.
it's ingrained, right?
And so, just to be clear, what are the legal kind of situation or policies around LGBTQ in China? Because I don't know.
So at the time, I moved to China in 2012, and I started that group in 2014. And China was much more open at that time. It was early in Xi Jinping's career, so he hadn't really started this authoritarian style of leadership yet. Like that comes more in since COVID, I would say. So it was kind of just like there were tons of gay men bars, and a lot of like a strong scene underground, but it's not illegal or anything. And they weren't like giving gay people too much of a hard time as long as they just stuck to their social activities and not tried to do some type of advocacy on a political level. So, yeah. So the quest to monetizing that group. In China, foreigners cannot own nonprofits. And I also didn't like the idea of the group being a nonprofit because I believe LGBT isn't an endangered species that need to be donated to. So I was like, how can we make this into something where I can hire people? It's unfortunate. Like if I were to do it now, I think I could actually make it work. But at the time, I was just not the entrepreneur I needed to be to make that successful. And I started an app for the LGBTQ community. Before that, I had another business, which was Airbnb property management when Airbnb first came to China. And I made like 6 figures and then closed that company. Like if I were smart, I would have sold it. But I was like very young and didn't know what I was doing. But I took the money I made from that company to make an app. And so I hired a company in China to make the app. And I found out like 6 months into it that they had outsourced it to India without telling me. And that was a disaster.
Classic.
Yeah, because the tech in India is different from the tech in China. So I ended up going to India and working. When I found out, because the whole community was waiting for this app, I went to India and worked on the app with that team and tried to get it to work because I was already out of money. I was running out of money. And yeah, so that's kind of was the foundation of my monetization quest. And the app did eventually come out in June of 2018, and we ran out of funding in September, and I couldn't find investors, like, because Chinese people don't want to invest in a foreigner, plus the LGBT component. And then Americans were like, we don't understand China. So it was just a catch 22. And I was out of money, and I owed people money. So I had to get a job, and I got a job later that year as a marketing manager at an accounting company. And I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, I went from being the coolest lesbian in China to this. And I was like, wait a second. I remembered somebody tried to sell me social media services while I was doing the app, and I couldn't believe how much they were charging. So I left and I started GAB China in the middle of the workday. I was like, wait a sec, I could do that. But I started it with the point that I would make the money to do the app again, because that first app was a very big public failure, and I felt I had to prove that it wasn't me.
Whoa, it's incredible. Does the community still exist today?
It does. Yeah, we still have the WeChat groups going, and I did make the money to remake the app, but I was going to do it as a WeChat mini program. And then I just decided, you know what, GAB China is working. I'm just going to focus on that and focus on making my own success, because through that, then I can do this type of project when I don't need funding from other people.
Were you really interested in China? I mean, I find this story fascinating because it kind of sounds like on a whim you moved to China and then you stayed there for a long time and acclimated into the culture and launching businesses. Were you interested in China from a young age? It just seems like such a gap to go, it's not like you went to Canada, you went to China. Like, it's so different culturally, and they don't even, allow foreigners to, do business in such ways there. So yeah, what made you stay so long?
Well, to be honest with you, all right. So first, I had no interest in China, no interest in Asia whatsoever. I do have an international background. My mom's from Brazil and my dad's from Cleveland, and we traveled a lot when I was a kid. My dad raised me to have a very international perspective. Like, when I was in kindergarten, he was teaching me the capitals of the world and wanting me to think about things on a global level. And I'm thankful for that because it worked, right? And China, I mean, it talked to a lot of foreigners who lived there during that period, like from early 2000s to now till COVID. It was a very fun place to live. Like, I always say that being an expat, especially in your 20s, you are free. It's kind of like you're not really part of the society. So that creates a lot of freedom to create yourself. Whereas if you're staying in your home country, you have your family, you have societal pressures, like you have a lot of control over what your thoughts should be. Whereas when you're an expat, you have kind of complete freedom, because no matter what, you're just a foreigner. And, that's great when you're young. But for me now, I was like, and part of the reason I moved back was like, I don't want to always just be a foreigner. I want to be able to be in a community and get embedded into society. So I mention that because I think it was fundamental to my entrepreneurial experience. Like, if I had stayed in the US, would I have become an entrepreneur? I don't think so, in some ways, because of the way that society, I just wouldn't have had the same situation, I don't think. And then on how I ended up staying there so long. So I had that LGBT group that I was really committed and passionate about. And I also had another project, which we haven't discussed, which is called Shanghai Love Notes. And it was kind of a popular social media project that I still have. And it was like telling stories about Shanghai through poetry and photography. And the BBC even put it in the documentary about China the last time they were there. And
it's beautiful. Wait,
so
is it in English or in Chinese?
It was
or
in
both?
English. Yeah, it's on Instagram. You can check it out.
Really?
So I had these two projects that I wanted to complete before I left. So that's kind of what kept me there. And then when I started GAB China, then I had that. So it was like, I always planned to leave, but I wanted to be able to leave on my own terms.
But you started a company with China in the name. So was that the intent, that you named it GAB China, as always thinking it would be just the Chinese department of a larger GAB?
Well, so it's so funny. So when I registered the company in 2016, I didn't know what business I was going to do. So I was like, all right, well, let's just call it GAB for me in China. And then when I started the agency in 2019, I was like, actually, that's a great name for an agency. So I kept, one of my concerns was like, well, yeah, like you said, I didn't want to become the Chinese expert. So my personal branding never really, I could have gone really into that, right? Like, oh, Gabby's the Chinese expert. I am, I still am, like, but I don't want to be known for that, because I think that was a period of my life. I do like Chinese marketing, but I have a lot of other things going on that I don't want my personal brand to be centered around it.
So what was that business? It was a agency for American companies to do business or to do social in China. Was that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, it still exists. Basically, we help international companies in China. I mean, we have all types of clients, and big brands, luxury brands, and more European companies than American, but we do have some American clients. And then we also added helping Chinese companies expand globally. And so, yeah, I mean, basically, I have an office in Shanghai, Guangzhou, and then we have remote team all over China, and then I have team members in India, Pakistan, and the Philippines running the agency.
Well, and so what made you choose to leave, and especially what made you choose New York as the Shanghai of the West?
Not the Beijing.
So I was in China during their famous Shanghai lockdown. I had been planning to leave anyway. Like that was always the plan. 10 years I felt was too long to stay, and I left at the 10-year mark in 2022. However, I left earlier than I had planned, a couple months earlier, because Shanghai had this crazy lockdown. Insane. It was like people were locked in their apartments, and COVID had already moved on from the rest of the world, mind you. So it was really crazy. And I thought that they were going to start a war or something. So I wanted to leave immediately.
Were you
And
locked in your apartment? Like, can you talk about
yeah,
what it was really like?
yeah. So basically, the Chinese government, the Shanghai government, locked the entire city down. Like you couldn't order anything. The food came from government rations and what people had in storage. And like some of my team members who lived further out in the city, not in nicer buildings, were getting like just a tomato or something, like not enough substance. And I mean, I lived in a pretty okay building, so mine wasn't as bad. Like it was still bad. You couldn't leave your apartment, but like I was able to leave the country. In other buildings, they would put up a fight for people to leave the country, even if they were a foreigner, which is illegal. And so the Americans would have to call the embassy and get them to put pressure to allow them to leave. It was crazy. So I left 15 days into it, April 15th, and I moved to Thailand. Yeah.
And then this is so crazy.
Wait, you're saying the Americans were not allowed to leave? They were like,
Well, all foreigners, they can't keep you in a country. Like that's illegal.
right.
So, but some buildings were trying to stop them from leaving, but they can't do that.
Because
So,
they feared they would spread COVID
yeah,
by like on their way out of the
yes,
building, or
yeah.
Were they just
And China,
terrified about COVID? I mean, that was 2 years after COVID even.
yes, it was crazy. Honestly, the economy still hasn't recovered from this.
yeah, I mean it's a huge city. But
Yeah.
you finally, but okay. So what was in your food? Now I'm kind of curious. If they had tomato, like like what did
Did you
you
have
get?
potatoes?
Well, all right. So so when it first got announced, they said it was only going to be a 3-day thing. So for those first 3 days, my girlfriend and I at the time went to the Ritz Carlton. So we got
Nice.
stuck at the Ritz because I was like, let's do a
That's a
steak.
great idea.
Yeah, right.
And then they have
That's
to
the way
pay
to
for
do it.
your hotel. You're like, well, we can't leave, so we
No,
just stay
we
here.
did have to pay.
Oh,
So for the first 10 days, we were at the Ritz Carlton and we had to pay. And my girlfriend was like, this is getting expensive. Like, I want to go home. And we weren't sure if we would be able to leave, but we did. That was a whole other crazy thing. We were able to move from the hotel to the apartment, which is
but
not
they
easy.
can't. So if they keep you there, you can't leave. How can they force you to pay? Like if you cannot afford to pay anymore.
I don't know. I guess they would have kicked us out to like the government hotels, which would have been
Oh,
way worse.
oh.
So yeah, that was the
So
whole thing.
then you finally were able to leave, and then
Yeah, and I
they
moved
just
to
brought
Thailand.
food. I'm just like, this is like communist Romania. Like, did they just bring food to your door every day in a bag?
Yeah, kind of like they would have it on the floor, like on your floor. and people, they would drop it off, outside your door, basically.
Did people go insane?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, because I left 15 days in. This lasted, I think, for 90 days.
What?
Yeah. So the mental health, like so many things are damaged from this. I had team members go crazy in it during that time too. There's nothing that you can do to help really, as a company.
Whoa.
God. Like
That's
you literally can't go outside.
No.
No fresh air, no. Wow.
Well, all right. So then from Thailand, how did you get to New York City?
So I had to reach like certain milestones in my company to be able to move back to the US, like make sure my team could run remotely without me in the same time zone. That was a big, so like making sure I got those processes in place and the team set up properly, because this was my main revenue at the time, So I needed to make sure that I felt okay to leave it and move back. And there are a few factors. One is just I was ready to move back. It's been 12 years. Two, like I said, I wanted to be part of a community again, like live in an actual society, like vote, stuff like that, right? And so I moved back to Cleveland, where I grew up, in May. And then I spent 2 months traveling around the US, checking out different EO chapters and deciding which city to move to. And I narrowed it down to like Tampa, Miami, and New York. And I decided New York not only was the best city in the country, but the best city on earth. I believe that.
Well, certainly better than Tampa. I can guarantee
That's for
that.
sure. I can't believe Tampa was in your top 3.
Well, I can't believe it either, but it was not sophisticated. Well, it brands itself as a emerging tech hub, but I think there's
So does Charlotte. So does every city. Like
Every
city I
city
go
says
to.
that. Yeah. Huntington, Alabama says that too. Like,
Cluj, Romania is like the Silicon Valley of Europe.
yeah, nobody's checking these,
Well, I should have wrote my reviews.
Well, so then then we met at EO, the entrepreneur organization house. So
Yeah,
many
how'd that
we-
happen? Like, what day
Right,
were
so
you?
let me tell you, that was like literally the first day I moved there, one of the first days. It was a Monday, and I was hanging out at EO house because, I didn't have my own apartment yet, so I was just like,
You're sleeping there?
yeah, EO house Airbnb. And I saw you guys and we started talking, and I asked you what other membership clubs should I join? And Flavio was like, blah, 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 Soho House. In fact, we're going there at 4:30 for happy hour if you guys are free, or if you're free. And I was
Classic.
like, sure, I would love to go. And that was a very important invitation. It's had a huge effect on my career. So
What happened?
Yeah, what happened? In what way?
So we go to Soho House, and you guys give me such a warm welcome, introducing me to everyone on the rooftop. And I met a publicist that she just got appointed to find an agency to make a website. And she had the impression that Asian companies are usually really good at making websites. And I was like, well, that's true.
It's a
In
true
fact,
stereotype.
yeah, I was like, we are. And she's like, are you free for dinner on Thursday to meet the people who need the website? And I was like, sure. And she's like, by the way, it's Lady Gaga's family restaurant. I was like, okay. So
So
yeah,
Whoa. Wait, was she gonna be there, Lady Gaga?
she wasn't there, but I was nervous going in. I was like, yeah.
So did you land the deal?
So yes, basically the story is, and this part, I'm new to New York and I need to let's call this a welcome to New York project. And he goes, welcome to New York. And
So nice.
yeah, we closed the deal, and the deal went so well that a couple months later, when my contract ended, we decided to start a separate entity together, and a subsidiary of my global company called Second Wind Media, which is basically marketing and advertising in the entertainment space.
Wow.
So yeah, Joe and I own Second Wind Media together.
That's amazing. Do you guys have any clients yet
Yes, we do actually.
that you can't name? That's okay.
I could mention, yeah, well, so Joanne's we treat as a client of Second Wind, which is the family restaurant. And we have Come Alive, which is an It's a yoga concept for entertainment. It's still it's like an emerging project in Chicago. We have a lot of different random. It's a new entity, so we're still closing new projects, but we have a few already in.
That's really, you really are an entrepreneur. I think you would have
Well,
started a business
thank
either way.
you. Thank you for taking me to happy hour that day.
Welcome to New York. We did think about it. I think Flavia and I, after that day, we were like, think of it from her perspective, right? You just like up and this unbelievable series of events happen that night and that day. Really, it was like during the day. You know, that's so cool because I think when Flavia and I independently moved to New York, like I had those days and meetings and just chance encounters, and it's part of what makes New York so special. I will say I haven't had any of those in Orange County, not a one. So New York is a very, very special place where that kind of like serendipity can just happen. You know, it's definitely better than
Totally.
Tampa.
I also think it's, you seem to have this very candid, open nature, and I'm wondering kind of how, where that come from. Seems like, yeah, you're very, very open to like moving to China on a whim, but also like starting another business with somebody, or it seems like you, maybe it's like an instinct that you have. I wonder, where did you cultivate that, or how did that come about?
That's a good question. I think I've always been open minded and spontaneous. It is in my nature. And I think I learned to lean into my gut instinct as an entrepreneur. I also do a lot of hypnotherapy with a guy who started his practice he's in EO actually in Beijing, but he's French. Amazing guy. And hypnotherapy basically like reprograms your subconscious. So when you are out doing things and it activates your gut instinct more. So if I feel like I'm doing something wrong, I'll have that stronger than I did before I did hypnotherapy. Likewise, when I feel something is right, I get that gut instinct as well. I think also just being an expat, and also I think like I don't like being diverse. I have to work smarter, like in order for me to open doors for myself, because it's just, how many women are in EO? Like how many queer women are in EO? Like 3, I think, so all of that has just made sure that I'm try to be as open-minded and receptive to opportunity. I do believe in like law of attraction and all of these things. So what do you guys think?
But what do you mean work smarter? Usually when people say
That's code for they don't work.
They're right. When people say like, well, I've been, had challenges, I need to work harder. But you said you have to work smarter.
I feel like you work a lot. You do work hard.
And so what is an example of that? I guess maybe you can share, because other entrepreneurs are listening to this. I think that they want to work smarter, but like, what does that mean? How does that
Well, I
manifest
think
itself?
that another entrepreneur might be like, oh, well, they're not going to pay me 20 grand to do this website. I'm not going to do it. But I'm new to this country. I know what I need. So it's being kind of like, having the self-awareness to know what it is that's needed to like see the long term. Like I'm very big picture oriented. So if I'm going to take a loss for the first couple of years, like I'm okay with that, because I know long term having those resources are more important. So that's the way I kind of am always looking a few steps ahead and seeing, is there a faster way to get there? I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like for example, to do the partnership, technically I know how to scale an agency. I've already done it before. I don't really need a business partner, practically speaking, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs, I think earlier in their career, think that they want to have 100% control. They want to be 100% owner. Whereas now that I'm more experienced as an entrepreneur, I realize, it's better, not necessarily better, but there's nothing wrong with sharing the pie in order to make a bigger project. And so these are some of the things I've been learning. Like I was 100% shareholder of my previous companies. Now I'm more interested in building partnerships in order to create bigger companies. So these are some of my thoughts about that.
Completely agree. I mean, I don't think I'll ever do a business alone again. As we kind of wrap up, like what lessons would you have, or what advice would you have for a 22-year-old who's, they're open on what they could do, right? They could move to China, they could move to India, they could move around. Like, would you encourage them to do that in kind of this day and age? Or what lessons would you have to a 22-year-old straight out of college today?
Honestly, I do think living abroad is one of the best learning tools that somebody can give themselves. I think that it activates a different part of your brain, especially if you're in a completely different environment than what you're used to. So even if it's not completely different, it's still challenging. And I think that it teaches you a lot about yourself, which is one of the fundamental aspects of success, is self-awareness. So by putting ourselves in challenging environments and different experiences, we become more self-aware. And I would 100% encourage a recent graduate, if they didn't study abroad, to take a gap year and go travel. It's way easier to do when you're young. Like my friends now in their later 30s, they're not going anywhere. It's not happening. It's now or never, I think, and that's the best time to do it, when you don't have any attachments and it's easier to do.
And you can stay in hostels.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I did. I did couch surfing. That sucks, but whatever it takes.
Sucks a lot more when you're in your late 30s.
True. What an incredible story. As we wrap here, we're gonna go around and share a hack we each have for folks. I'll start. Have you guys used Perplexity AI? Speaking of AI, you know how if you search like what's Gabby Gabriel's email on, say, ChatGPT, we're gonna say, oh, sorry, due to our privacy policy, we can't give you Gabby's email. And I'll do that. Gemini does that, but not Perplexity. If you go on Perplexity and ask, Perplexity is like, here you go. Here's her personal email. Here's her business email. Like they will pull email because it's out there somewhere online. But these other search engines, including Google, just refuse to give it to you because of their policy. But Perplexity doesn't have that policy, and so they'll just give it to you, and they'll source it. They'll put a source to where it came from, the website or some spreadsheet somewhere for a conference somebody registered at some point. So it's right. In fact, it's better than like ZoomInfo and Apollo and these other places that charge you lots of money to get emails. For the folks in healthcare, they're often wrong. Often it's based on user data, or it's based on old data. They might have moved jobs, or it's like some random AOL that doesn't actually exist. But Perplexity will have a source, so for sure it's accurate email. And go Perplexity. Really start to discover some of the benefits. It's like a better Google. I think Perplexity is probably the closest competitor to Google, because ChatGPT and these other things are not actually Google. They're just making up stuff. But Perplexity, actually, it's all sourced. It's really more like Google with a little better interface.
I feel like Google's going to buy them. That's my contrarian prediction.
All right. What about you, Taylor?
I have a couple here. All right, I'm going to go with the simple one. So, Gabby, just the idea of this could be like a tech life hack, could be a new pillow you bought, could be a way you fly, could be any kind of just life hack.
Okay.
Hacking your. Here's mine. Mine is simple. Disable the caps lock key. I think caps lock there's no use for it. Like, right, every time I get annoyed, I'm like, crap, I didn't mean to yell that. So if you're on Mac OS, it's actually very easy to disable the caps lock key. It's actually very easy to disable any key on Mac OS. If you want to play a trick on someone in your life, you can disable like the T and no T. So
it'd be really hard to spell Taylor Trusty.
It really would. Okay. So the way you do it's in you can just Google it, but there's like a keyboard mapping settings built into Mac OS. I assume Windows has the same thing, but it's built in. You don't have to download an extension or anything. And it disables the light too, which is key.
Annoying.
Yeah.
Did you replace it with something else?
No, but you can remap it, because that's actually what it's designed for. So you could remap it to something else. Like you could remap it to Shift if you wanted, or on macOS you could remap it, I think, to a shortcut. So then it could do any number of things. You could have it play a song, play a Death of Caps Lock song. So it can go any direction you would like, but I just sent it to null. Don't do anything. So I press it as much as I want and no action, which is my desired action. The reason I bring this up as life hacks, because I just got a new MacBook, and when I transfer over, for whatever reason, it didn't transfer that setting. And so I kept pressing caps lock because I was so used to it being disabled. And I was like, I got to go refine it.
Why did you press it? If you think it's disabled, why do you press it all the time?
Yeah, I guess that's a different question. I don't know. Like, I'm actually looking at my keyboard right now. Why do I press this so much? Maybe I press it on accident.
Like a fidget spinner.
Yeah, like I fidget a lot and I click on a lot of stuff, and maybe it's my fidget button. That's a good question. But anyway, disable your caps lock key.
Can you replace it with something else?
Yeah, you can make it.
So my caps lock key is actually mapped to control.
What? Oh, you did replace it.
The control in back in Vim and using kind of some of these code editors, everybody was like, you have to use control a lot. And control, if you notice, it's really kind of like hard to press. It's like a tiny little key hidden over there, and you have to press it a lot for these things. So that's why a lot of people map it to control.
Oh, wow. All right.
That's interesting. Cool.
Gabby, what's your life hack?
Yeah, my hack is how to fly business class cheaper.
Oh, let's hear it.
I fly a lot, so I always buy, this works best for international flights. I'll buy the I'll buy the economy flight, and then I'll pay to upgrade, and usually using miles plus money. So let's say a flight to China and economy is $500, then if you bought business class flat out, it's like $10,000. However, if you use this hack, you pay $500, then you pay $500 plus 25,000 miles to fly business class. So that works best on United. And then, but there's a caveat, is that it's not always guaranteed you'll get the upgrade. So you have to check how many seats are available in business class to plan it. But I do it. It's been working for me the past couple of years.
Wow. All right. That's a good hack.
Wait, so I thought sometimes they don't let you upgrade. Like if you buy economy, I thought they don't let you upgrade to business. Is that not true?
No, I fly only United. United does. And actually, once you're premier status, like I'm 1K. So on domestic flights, I usually get free upgraded all the time.
It's really hard to get 1K. You must fly to China a lot.
Well, I did last year.
Well, very cool. Well, Gabby, such a lovely treat to have you on. Really appreciate you coming, sharing your story. Congrats, and enjoy this beautiful city and American life.
Thank you to both of you for that day. Honestly, it's had a huge effect, and for today. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
So happy for you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Gabby.
Bye.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.